What is up, my fellow Chibits? Today, I'm going to bring all of you the weekly anime review of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Diamond is Unbreakable. Okay, I now understand why many of you have been talking about sheer heart attack with this episode. I was quite surprised to see how durable the little tank heart attack was in this episode. When our boy, Jotaro, is having trouble with ripping this thing apart and breaking it, you know this thing is durable as fuck. We saw what Jotaro did in part 3, okay? We remember how far he went and how much he destroyed certain things or different stands when he was punching them. We know the power of Star Platinum. We know how strong Jotaro is. But to see how this man used Zawaldo twice, not once, but twice, and still could not defeat this thing and crush it and destroy it completely just shows you how powerful Kira's stand really is. Now, to dive straight into it, okay? Before I dive into the fight, to the strategy and stuff like that, I want to talk about Kira's stand. So Kira's stand, it is revealed now that what we saw with the toy little tank with the skull on it that exploded, we now know it is a part of Kira's stand ability. We now know that, Kira's stand ability, it's Killer Queen, but also you have it to where he has like a different type of part of his stand, like a different trait or ability, which turns into a toy tank, and it's pretty much called Heart Attack or Sheer Heart Attack, and it goes after a person that has a high body temperature, or anything that has a high temperature. So there is a weakness to this tank, but it's a very limited weakness because it will continuously attack until it takes down its opponent. So it's not something that will stop ever going after someone, and it's only someone like Koichi that could probably be able to fight something like this and take it down. But getting into it though, the overall ability of this tank is very powerful and can easily be abused, because for this tank to be that durable with Star Platinum not being able to break it like it was, look, this is how bad it was. Jotaro was punching it so much, his fist started bleeding. His fists were bleeding with how hard he was punching that tank with his stand, and he still didn't break it in half. It got some visible cracks and stuff, but it wasn't broken. It was moving around just fine, which goes to show you how durable it really was. So because of this, you know for a fact, if someone like Jotaro can't break this tank, it's pretty damn strong. And so the durability of it, insanely high. And then it does have some speed to it, but also the way it constantly goes after a target in its vicinity means that it won't stop until it finally takes out its opponent. So it's an incredibly strong stand, and I'm not even talking about, Killer Queen's ability to make objects explode. That's an entirely different can of worms entirely, because how strong it is. So Kira's stand, in a way, like I've said before, it's very simplistic. It is. It's a simplistic stand. It just depends on how it's used. And the way it's being used, Kira being a serial killer that hunts down people and kills them, and he has a stand like this, it makes him an incredibly broken character. Because if this was given to, like, let's say, a regular person that didn't have a really good mind, like, let's just say, any type of stupid character we've seen in JoJo or any other anime or manga series, this stand wouldn't be that effective. It wouldn't. If someone didn't have a good mind or something and know how to use tactics, this stand would honestly be a very bad stand. But since Kira has such a good mind, he knows how to use his stand ability, he knows how to be sneaky, cautious, and do certain things, it makes his ability very strong and the perfect ability for him to have. So, right now, after this episode, I'm really looking forward to future fights, because this episode, kind of encases of what we could probably expect from the upcoming part 4 of JoJo with the upcoming fights with Kira. So let's dive into it. So this fight overall, very different from the normal fights we see. There has been fights like this, but majority of the fights of JoJo sometimes, not all the time, but some of the times, you have it to where a lot of the fights are kind of settled by brute strength, or sometimes, my stand is more powerful, I have a lot of strength, I can destroy you. That's kind of how a lot of fights were done in part 3 JoJo. Let's just be straight up honest, a lot of fights were. There was some tactics in fights like Darby and stuff in part 3 of JoJo, but a lot of fights were kind of about brute strength and stuff. Some of it was tactics and strategy, but a lot of it did come down to, brute strength. And this episode kind of encompasses what is different about this part and what makes JoJo Part 4 so good and how much Jotaro has changed. Now, Jotaro, he's always been a very intelligent character. I even mentioned this and talked about it multiple times in my Part 3 anime reviews, but we really get to see how much he has changed from Part 3 to Part 4 with this episode. I mean, he's always been smart. Like I said, I'm going to go back to the Darby fight. In the Darby fight, we got to see how intelligent he was when it came to outsmarting his opponents and using tactics and strategy. But to see how he was kind of like someone that was teaching Koichi how to fight and look at the entirety of his surroundings instead of rushing in and beating the shit out of things, it makes him such a better character. And to see how much he's calmed down, matured, and actually is able to logically think about everything just showcases how great of a character he is. And I'm really loving the role that Jotaro is playing in this part of JoJo. It makes him such a great character, a great cast, like a great character part of the cast because of what he's doing right now. Just teaching Koichi how to pay attention, listen very well, and think about where you can, attack from, and also when someone's going to attack you. And we got to see kind of a display of this already with the rats in Josuke and also Jotaro. When we saw that fight, we got to see that not all stands and all people we can underestimate. Like, for instance, a stand could be very basic and simple, but it could easily overpower the strongest of stands. As we know, Star Platinum and Zawaldo, that ability is incredibly broken. It's a strong ability. It's a very, 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 very strong ability that can easily be abused and easily kick a lot of ass. But depending on the stand and depending on the person, a lot of stands can honestly outbeat Star Platinum and Zawaldo easily. Just depending on the tactics and strategies someone uses. And we got to see this displayed with the rats. And once again, we get to see that even though Star Platinum is very strong, it does not mean that it can constantly beat everyone around. It cannot destroy every stand. There's counters to Star Platinum, and this entire fight is instantly a bad matchup for Jotaro because of how Kira's stand works. And I like how Jotaro is able to kind of say, like, okay, we need to pay attention. The stand is obviously in this room. We just need to look around and make sure we know where it's coming from before it attacks us, and then that's kind of how he's thinking about the entire fight. So this episode was a perfect blend of strategy, action, and tactics from Jotaro and also Koichi. It just makes me appreciate this arc and also the entirety of JoJo so much more, and just to see how the writer of this series has matured throughout Part 1 of JoJo to Part 4. I mean, you can see a clear difference in the way the fighting is done now compared to Part 1 and then Part 4. You just see so much maturity and how the writer has really grown throughout writing all these different arcs, and that makes me truly happy with JoJo. So getting off of that, let's talk about the entirety of Koichi and his stand. So Koichi's stand evolves once again. As we know, it was Act 1, and then it went into Act 2, a couple episodes ago, or maybe like an arc or two ago, and then now with this episode, it goes into Act 3. And instantly, there's complete differences in this stand. For one, the stand seems to have a mind of its own. Now, if I remember correctly, there was a stand a long time ago in Part 3 of JoJo that did have its own mind. It was like the sword stand. I forget the exact name of it or whatever, but it was the stand that was in the sword and had like its own mind. This ain't the first time we've kind of seen a stand have its own distinct personality and its own ways of talking. But the way this stand was in this episode of JoJo clearly stands out. Koichi is a very, very big difference to the normal stand users because, for one, his stand has been evolving. And I mean, we have seen that Star Platinum did kind of evolve at the end of Part 3. It got, Zawaldo and it was able to use similar to what Dio was able to do. But now seeing how Koichi's stand is literally changing forms and how his stand is literally changing and how it went into Act 3, we now know that transformations and evolving of stands do in fact happen. And it doesn't just happen once, it can happen multiple times. 2 times, 3 times, we don't know. But we do know now that stands can evolve. But one of the biggest things is that a stand apparently can have its own personality. And that is probably one of the most fascinating parts about this episode. I mean, like I said, we've seen this kind of displayed before with other enemies and other stands, but this is the first time we've had like a main character that has had a stand like this, and it clearly stands out, because the way the stand was talking to Koichi and how it's like, I handle it, just give me an order and all that, and went out and did its own thing, it's completely different from the normal stands and how the stand operates, and since it's evolving as well, I wonder if we're going to see more stands like this in the future of JoJo, because, I mean, look, I talked about, transforming stands or stands evolving at the end of Part 3. I remember talking about this when Star Platinum got the ability to stop time, or at the very least counter Dio. But now seeing this with, Koichi's stand able to actually talk, communicate, and, you know, initiate orders, it makes me wonder if the mangaka is going to use this for some future plot point in the future of JoJo. Maybe a stand might be a final villain or something over, you know, certain parts. It has its own intelligence and it fights. I could see something like this done, especially with how this stand was in this episode. But getting off of that though, overall the abilities of this stand, incredibly fast. Very, very fast stand. It doesn't have a tail anymore, and it looks really different compared to the first two forms, but I do like this stand, and honestly, you actually get to see a preview of this stand in the opening song, and I mean, I've been watching the opening song every week. I'm a big fan of the new JoJo opening. I watch it every single week, because, I mean, as I know, JoJo openings, they tend to have a lot of spoilers in them, but you don't understand the spoilers until the spoilers happen, which I'm very happy with the way David Production handles JoJo openings, because a lot of shonen anime, or any anime in general, when they make opening songs, it spoils the fuck out of future events. It just absolutely spoils it, and you're like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I mean, look, let's just go to, like, a series, like, let's say, an old series, maybe Bleach, Naruto, even some parts of One Piece, not all the time, but some parts of One Piece, or even, you know, Fairy Tail or other shonen, just mentioning a few shonen out there. A lot of shonen tend to, you know, spoil shit, future points, plot points, and you instantly key in like, what the fuck, why would you spoil this? But with the way JoJo openings are, you don't understand those spoilers until the spoilers happen, especially with Koichi's stand being in the damn opening song. Like, the stand is in the opening song, it's been there since the new opening song started, but you didn't realize it until we saw it in this episode. I was like, oh, so that's what was in the opening. So very, very good stuff. I like how, you know, the opening song was handled with that reveal. But yeah, episode overall, truthfully, a very, very good episode. I mean, I like how Koichi handled, you know, Killer Queen's stand, how he handled Kira's stand and all that, the way he actually made sheer heart attack on the ground where it couldn't barely move, and how it affected Kira as well. Kira's hand literally couldn't be moved. It was so heavy, and I like how that displayed over to him, and how he realizes, like, he shouldn't no longer think that everything doesn't have a weakness. Like, he always thought that his stand had no weakness. That's what he was saying in the episode. Like, my stand has no weakness. But then he literally had his stand defeated. So this right here showcases that he has a lot to learn, and I wonder if his character will develop from this. Like, if you'll learn that he shouldn't become overconfident. Even though he's a murderer that's gotten away with a lot of murders for 15 plus years now, it does not mean that he should let his guard down and become overconfident. And the way he was in this episode shows that he got overconfident and he got cocky. And so I hope that he learns from this and comes to the point where he realizes he shouldn't always think that everything he has no weaknesses. He needs to realize that he needs to now use tactics and strategy to go up against a stand user, because he recently has come into contact with stand users, so he kind of needs to change up his strategy than normally he used to do. So I can't wait to see how Kira develops from this. I hope he does develop from this, you know, point on, and to see how he kind of tries to continue to outsmart our cast of characters. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you all feel about this week's episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? How did you feel about Sheer Heart Attack, the little tank that was following Heat around? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.